Everyone. Nice to see your faces again today.
We're getting to spend lots of time together, some of us.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna send the agenda. But really the purpose of the meeting, it came out of conversations that I was having with Kathy, where she essentially wanted to have us answer the question. Joan, I think you were at the meeting for Timelines Archives and Curricula, so you already know. Yeah. So essentially asking the question, if we were in front of the mayor and we were asked to give recommendations about specific things for commemoration, what would those be? And so essentially what it really came out to was core questions of what are the recommendations that we want to make to the city regardless of funding, discussing a little bit about funding, what that would look like, and also discussing what the subcommittee, uh, what the subcommittee's role is in pushing forward those ideas that we might recommend, or like vetting the ideas that we recommend, or whatever you all think is most appropriate for the commission and the subcommittee moving forward. If that makes sense. Yeah.
So
It,
Hennessy, you saying that
it,
those are the core questions we need to answer today?
Yeah, those are the I would say the guiding questions. Oh, and Kathy's joining, so um she can also explain a little bit. But yes, essentially, hi Kathy, you joined right at
Hi.
the right time. I was just explaining the process that we've been going through with having these conversations, and especially like with the other subcommittees that we've had these meetings, the questions have really boiled down to, if we were in front of the mayor, what is it that we recommend? If we thought in terms of, and what we think about funding, and what we would want the subcommittee and the commission to, what role we want them to play moving forward. But if you have anything to add to that.
Gosh, we should have just kept everybody on the last
That's
meeting and, kept going.
what we were thinking.
Giving you a coffee break and a pee break, but that's about it. Great to see you all. And let me just sort of reiterate what Hennessy just ably said. And that is that we are sort of at a point of feeling like we need to give both the mayor's office and city council some fairly firm sense of recommendations and ideas in a fashion that not only just reports out what you're doing, because, Hennessy is doing that. I believe you know this, to council by virtue of what the ordinance creating the Commemorations Commission required. But also just to make sure that as they are looking for funding, and looking for opportunities to steer resources and or partnerships of some sort in the direction of the 250th first right now, but maybe even things that have a longer tail into the 400, that we're at least getting some of your thinking, because you're really actually thinking about this stuff, and will be largely reacting over the next couple of years to be really keeping on top of the events as the 250th actual occurrences as they come along. So I think this is really an attempt to gather what you have been talking about, contemplating the approaches that perhaps some of the ideas that you have what form they might take, and how we might put those in a report that can be used almost as I hate to sound it in the least bit diminishing, almost like a catalog of opportunities. As funders become available and are interested in certain things, and as the mayor's office sees opportunities to advance some of them. So really, it's kind of an interim report, so to speak, but it's really trying to drill down and be a bit more concrete than could we or might we, but we think we should, the city, little c, big C, whichever you like, might pursue a historic marker program, since we were all just on that particular call, that sort of thing. So that's the backdrop to why this particular agenda. Any questions?
I'm so sorry. I had to miss the earlier meeting. Is it possible, Kathy, just to give like a 30-second update or Hennessy on what emerged from that? Because it seems so relevant to what you're asking us now.
The marker program?
Yeah.
Oh, Hennessy, you wanna?
Yeah, so
Give it a whirl?
I gave a brief presentation on the history of commemoration activities in the state with the Tercentenary Commission and in the city for the 200th. I explored the Blue Plaque program in other cities and internationally, as well as in Cambridge. I explored the kind of markers that we have had in Boston in the past. And then really what came out of it was the discussion afterwards. In thinking about how we should inventory existing markers, how we update those, how we would move forward with a marker program, and how we would review these things and apply these processes inside the city.
Good conversation ensued with many of the folks who are here. I would say 2/3 at least. That really began to that talked a little bit about trying to make sure that we understand what's already out there in the way of historic markers over time. So much of what Hennessy is using as a reference point, but what is actually surviving out there in the way of interpretive markers of places and commemorating people that we should know more about. We might even revisit just to make sure that in a more modern context, they're explaining history in a way that is accurate. What else did we talked about how folks might find these and also how they might how we might group them together either in a single reference vehicle, whether it's a common app or website or some sort of a convening umbrella type of a vehicle that would basically give us a place to put all markers, new, old, and future. And what else did we some folks who are on the call?
No, that's good. That's all I was
but-
looking for. I appreciate
Yeah.
it because it seems like if we're going to make some recommendation, to the mayor's office or to the mayor, that that conversation obviously would be part of the approach now for the legacy of what we're trying to do.
Sure. And Dave, we definitely talked about the fact that there needs to be much more conversation around this, because the question of identity of the marker or what it might look like, those kinds of things are yet to come, but certainly understood as things that we need to discuss more before even thinking about either design development or, the other related matters, like how we would make decisions, how you apply, what's the entity or the body that makes those decisions, possibly, has money to do these kinds of things. So lots to figure out, but I think it was enough to get the wheels turning and helped
Yeah.
us with a lot of good feedback that we can sort of take back and synthesize.
Okay, thank you.
Did anybody else who was on the call want to add anything to that? Suzanne, hello.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'd like to add that because this is the exhibits, events, exhibits, and trails group, that this would be a great opportunity for us as a committee to suggest that these markers be used as a way to create trails in each of the neighborhoods, which is so important. But it would definitely help us in crafting what those trails could look like with places that are already marked or will be marked in the future.
Oh,
Thank you for that as well, Suzanne, because that was another kind of question I had, but you just hit on it, which is, um, whether it makes sense to people or not, it's just a fact that there's equity or inequity built into wayfinding and how people navigate cities. So to have that as part of our approach in terms of how we do this, I think is critical. So very happy to hear that's something that we're discussing as well.
Great.
right.
Thanks, Dave.
So I guess we can expand a little bit more on that conversation as well as the trails conversation and generally what we have been talking about in order to really parse through what we'd want to, recommend um, in this in the meeting. Give me 1 second. I'm pulling up the report, 6-month report, just so I have it readily available just to see the things that we have recommended, and I will send it right now as we talk. So a lot of the stuff that we had previously discussed was, you know, branding, website. Yes, let me share with you guys once more.
All right, Hennessy, are you sending this via email?
I just sent it in the chat.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the goals that we had, that was one of our very first goals, is just
Hey.
branding.
Hennessy,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. It's saying that we need access.
That is so weird. It says it has it here that everyone who has the link. Okay,
Sam, I was able to open it, so
Yeah.
it
Maybe it's
might
just
be
me.
something on
no,
your
no,
end.
I updated it, so you should be able to at least view it now, regardless. I don't know how that happens.
I can see it too, yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. It like I share it with everyone, and then sometimes you have access, sometimes they don't.
It works now. Thank
Okay,
you.
great,
Okay.
great. So obviously we had that was our big one of our discussions about the design and around the brand, as well as social media and a website. And I mean, I think we all saw, if we were on the calls with Alex, that they shared their first drafts of their Boston 250 branding. And I know that have a brand guideline. I don't know if it's out to the world yet. Kathy, do we know?
It is on the verge of going out.
Okay, yeah.
You will all be on the receiving end, as will the rest of the commission. And it will have all the branding guidelines and access to the files, all of that. So not only for the commission use, of course, but for any of your organizations.
And then the next thing that we have here is also to develop a distinctive brand for Boston 400. So maybe that's a conversation we start having with them now.
Would one of the ideas that we're looking for right now be to kind of connect the two and start that continuity now? That some of the planning and recommendations for the 250th should be done with an eye towards and in the spirit of what we're trying to do in 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Or is that, does that make sense, or is that kind of incongruous and that we're kind of shoehorning two things? I mean, for me, it makes sense because it's like, if we want to get to a point in 2030 where we're, commemorating and
Yeah.
building out assets and conversations now that are related to the 250th, they could be tied together. I'm just not quite sure, tangibly how we put that in a recommendation per se.
Except for the idea that we should be planning now for the
Right.
400th. There's no harm in that at all. In fact, that would be prudent given effectively our late start on the 250th. So I would actually say that's a very valid thing to recommend is that there be attention now paid to framing out what the 400th might look like so that we are getting ahead of that ball. But I would definitely say that this should be more decidedly leaning in the direction of the 250th in the next couple of years, just to be able to capitalize on what I know the mayor's office sees as opportunities through corporate funding and others to attract dollars into projects of now or legacy projects that might blend in right away with 400, to your point, Dave, but for now are really about the near term.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Under the exhibits, events, exhibits and trails section, am I missing events? Is there a bullet on events at all?
There
Um,
is, I think the theory in here is to support communities and organizations that are already planning events. So to
Where is
create
that, Matt? Can you point that out to me?
it is,
I don't
7,
see it.
page 7, I think, which is with the discussion around toolkits.
yeah.
Toolkits. Okay, all right.
Yeah, bottom of page
Yes.
6 into the top of
Yeah.
page 7.
Yeah.
But I think, to take that point, Suzanne, I think that a challenge that we have grappled with, because we're also silent on exhibits here,
Right.
is that it takes a fair amount of time and staff capacity that we have not had available to develop a sort of arc of exhibits and events. And so there's a more robust theory of markers and trails in here, but less so for events and exhibits. And
Okay.
I don't think that we have actually taken a clear inventory of what's already in progress that the city could lean into in the way, for example, I know that next month there are some organizations that are working to do work around the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's Ride and the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and the city has joined forces with them and has leaned in to support that work in a way that I think will be good for audiences, will be good for telling Boston's story. But what we haven't done is said, like, we know these are things that organizations are working on, whether it's an exhibit, an installation, or a big event, and said, we would love it if the city could really steer funders to these things or could provide actual hands-on support. I do think we had a conversation about the 4th of July in 2026, which is already a city-owned event. And I do think we should encourage the city to envision something fitting for our city that is large in scale and ambitious, and is an event on that particular date. And it may be an event, we had a conversation about, like, can we do an event downtown, but with echoes in neighborhoods all over the city, so that we're serving both tourist audiences and local residents and trying to create a shared experience. Sorry, that was a long-winded
No, that's good.
amplification of what I think, Suzanne, you were trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think, are you saying that? I think what you're saying is that we need to put another bullet in there about the city participating in and sponsoring, hosting something of already existing events or events done by others and city events. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, I think what I was saying was that it's going to be hard to do something big from scratch at this point, with the possible exception of the 4th of July, because there's already infrastructure for that. So we should identify what others are doing and then say, we really think the city should lean into these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that we add a bullet to that event, that section, saying that.
I would like to, I mean, I know I'm on the record since we started meeting to say we have a go or no go point. There's a point of no return. But I do think, Nat, rather than letting the city off the hook and saying, we know it's too late. Y'all know what resources you did or did not have. You knew this was coming. It is not a surprise. So I think we just need to be explicit to say the city has to make an investment in a major event outside of what is already scheduled. Now, what that could look like and when that could happen could be anybody's guess, but I think that we're letting the mayor and everyone else off the hook if we just say, well, we know it's too late, so just glom on to whatever else is going on. I think we need to be very explicit in the recommendations that says time is of the essence. The city does not have a unique activity for the 250th. That is something that is truly city generated. They need to do something. And whether it's in the plaza in front of Government Center, in the common, across the neighborhoods, this moment warrants city government making significant investment and moving resources and individuals to staff up. And I mean staff up. This is not the commission's responsibility. This is the city's staff responsibility. But I don't think we let them off with the recommendation, because if the city chooses to ignore the recommendation, that's a deliberate choice. But I think we need to put out that this moment, and I gotta be honest, this moment calls for a big event. So y'all figure out what the big event is, but this moment calls for a big event. And I'm sorry, I'm off screen because I had a presentation earlier, so I'm still eating my lunch.
Or
That's okay. That's good. Okay.
yeah, I mean, the rest of the things that are here is just, walking trails, which we've talked about, leveraging engagement with the arts, which I think is kind of in some sense counts for exhibits. I mean, we can argue maybe yes, maybe no. Counts for some kinds of exhibits, but not necessarily all of the possible exhibits that could be.
Hennessy, I'll jump in here. An engagement with the arts, for those of us who work in museums, does not qualify as an exhibition. An
Right.
exhibition is or installation is deliberate engagement of something to feature arts or history or whatever in areas of the city. And quite frankly, they got a new fancy archaeology lab and a bunch of empty buildings across the city. They can do something.
Can we go a little deeper on that? And on the event, I liked what I was hearing about a large scale event that has echoes in the neighborhoods. Has there been any discussion at the committee level of the nature of that event? Or just that it needs to be citywide, if it's, a larger downtown, or esplanade or waterfront, type of an activity?
Yes, we did discuss that.
Okay.
We discussed having, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, but we did discuss a statewide celebration, excuse me, citywide celebration. Sorry, state head, city head, that everyone, everyone 250, it's just for everybody. So that something would be held in every neighborhood to celebrate the 250th.
Yeah, I wanted to add, I remember early on we talked about like open streets. We talked about the block party grants that were going out, because we were like, you could use those June, July weekends and have people host block parties in their neighborhoods, so that so that they are not only doing something, but we're taking that the neighborhoods themselves are also taking some ownership over what goes on in their neighborhoods. So that was something that we did discuss. Was
Fireworks,
fireworks.
Yeah.
not just downtown.
Mhm.
I would just say, in support of what Dr. Trent was saying, like, does the city want to own something here, right? In terms of a program, an exhibit, an event. I mean, it's great. Don't get me wrong that the city is, participating in some of the Paul Revere stuff, and that there's something at City Hall that is part of that program. That's wonderful. But
No, there's nothing at City Hall, Dave.
I thought there was as
No,
part of,
it's
if
gone.
you, oh, they took that out?
Yes.
Okay, so I retract that, and it's even more imperative that the city own something and put on something, that is identified as, big C and city driven sort of event.
Okay.
And to build on that, Dave, I think that this is the time that the city invites people who are from Boston to come back. So like, Iowa DeBerry, isn't she from Dorchester, right? Like, so if there's an event in Dorchester, maybe she's the celebrity host in Dorchester, right? Like having different celebrities associated with different areas of the city so that it becomes like, if you go to Dorchester, you'll see this set of events. And, so it doesn't feel like downtown is the only place where you get the highest quality entertainment and celebrities, right? Like that doesn't feel right to me, right? It
Right.
should be,
Not at all. Yeah, you're exactly right with that.
you know what I mean? So that there's, well, I live over by North End. There's enough happening over in North End just naturally. Right. But that we really encourage the city to invest and make sure there's high quality things happening. New additions from Roxbury, right? Maybe there's a new addition event in Roxbury, right? We don't bring new addition downtown. I mean, you can later, but I think it means something to say New Edition is going to be doing something in the neighborhood, right? Be very deliberate about those invitations to amplify this moment and making sure that there's a diversity of personalities doing this all over the city.
So I just want to throw out something that would make, it sounds like it's done in other states, but it's something called Home Week or Old Home Week. And towns will have this celebration in small towns to invite former residents, families, friends into the back to the neighborhood and have like a whole week of events. It's just something, it's just sounds like this is something that we would strive for, to invite people back to their neighborhoods to enjoy each other's company and celebrate the 250th together.
I like it, Suzanne.
Yeah. Charlestown's doing something similar. They have I think it's Charlestown Calling. And they're trying to do some week-long thing to invite people back. So it's a good idea.
I wonder if we suggest something throughout the course of May, right? Because then you're kind of in between the two major events, obviously the Patriots Day weekend in April, and then June with Bunker Hill. And then there's this kind of gap. I mean, Chelsea's doing some things, of course. But I wonder if there's an opportunity there for the city to build out some programming that kind of connects those dots between April and June and is neighborhood focused. So it's part of obviously the commemoration, but you're not obscured in any way by those major anniversaries.
For next year, right, Dave?
No, for this year. I'm talking about obviously it's right around the corner.
That's not enough time.
Yeah, that's too bad, because this is really the moment. The spring of 25 is really the moment for, Boston to showcase.
That's my opinion anyway. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
Kathy and Hennessy, what do you think? Could the city pull off a citywide celebration in May of this year?
I do not think so. Sorry, but
I don't think so
I think they're
either.
putting almost all their juice into the April 18th event.
Yeah, then maybe next spring or something around evacuation day. I don't know. It depends on how much runway they need.
So I think evacuation day is one thing, that's going to be big on its own. But Dave, that's why I was asking next year, because if it's something in May, you've got March and then July to
But the
of
other,
next year to do something in between.
yeah, and the other thing that favors, I think, next year and presents opportunities is that we'll have tall ships back in July, and apparently it's really like pretty big this time around. And there may be opportunities to do things that um, not only bring people to the waterfront, which is important, but also carries off into the neighborhoods a little bit more of the relationship of the water and the harbor to to the depths of the neighborhood. Okay.
Well, I would say let's look to spring of 26.
Yep.
I think that leading into everything and getting people excited about what's going to happen feels like a natural, plus it'll actually, and I mean spring, not fake spring like we had this week, but like real spring.
I was hoping it was fake snow last night, but anyway.
I'm not trying, yeah, but if we do real spring and really think about what that could look like for folks.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge is for the city to make it something that people are excited about, that people want to set their calendars to, that it's a celebration, that sort of thing. I think March is too early. I know that's when, we have evacuation day, but I think May is good, May, early June to pull people into something, right? And see what happens.
I just had an idea. This is my former city hat, Kathy Hennessy and team here. So Noel, that sounds good with the May events. I was thinking that it could be, you could stagger, and I'm just throwing out an idea here. You could stagger the events per neighborhood, similar to like the mayor's coffee hours, so that if you live in, let's say, if you live in Dorchester now, but you grew up in Mattapan, you could go to Mattapan celebration one weekend and then Dorchester's another weekend, so that, you can participate in as many of these neighborhood activities as you like, and then end it with the big celebration net in July. And Kathy, you mentioned it too. And that way people are getting excited about this, the big downtown thing, and still feel like they're part of a neighborhood celebration. And it may be a way to promote everybody to go to the big culmination celebration in downtown. That's my idea. Threw it out. There you go.
Suzanne, I love that idea. And I also think that, as we move forward, I think coordinating with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services, I think that they could, they should at the very least have a list of neighborhood events that are going on. And I think that they could definitely give us, well, on this date, is the Mattapan parade or whatever it may be, that they can make sure that that those weekends are booked up. But I think that's a great idea.
Sort of jumping off of what you were saying, Sam, it's similar to what I was thinking. Is there a way, and I'm not saying this to let the city off the hook, but for existing either community events or large scale citywide events, can the city work with those partners to add something about the anniversary to those events? It's like Boston Pride 2026, or, like you were saying, is there still a Rossi Day Parade? Like, there are things that are happening already that could connect there. The other thought, as Suzanne, you were saying, doing things neighborhood by neighborhood, that's what Chicago does all summer long for their neighborhoods. Each one of them has like a weekend celebration. And so it brings people around the entire city and gets those neighborhoods to be able to, or allows those neighborhoods to show off like what makes them special. And yeah, I think we have also a pretty intense neighborhood identity in a similar sense as they do. So it might be something for us to think about.
Yeah, I was actually just going to suggest on that point that we look at what Philadelphia is proposing to do in the spring and summer of 2026, which is essentially a series of neighborhood festivals. If I remember correctly, Philadelphia is calling it like the gateways or neighborhood gateways or something like that. So there'd be like a festival built around the 250th with some common element threading through all of them, but each neighborhood gets its moment in the sun, and it builds from May to through the end of the summer. We've talked about like highlighting the revolutionary history of different neighborhoods, as well as elevating the voices people live in those neighborhoods. Might be a way to do that. I don't know what the sort of common experience might be, but you could imagine a range of things that would be really about sharing your voice in some way.
Yeah, nah, I've heard of that too. The other thing is because I grew up outside of Philadelphia. The reason that they're doing that too is people are going to throw block parties anyway in
Yeah,
Philadelphia.
right. Might as
As
well
soon as
just
the wea-
hijack
I
it.
mean, you might as well just hijack it because half the time on the weekends in the spring and summer, you can't drive down certain blocks because block parties are happening. So I think they were just kind of taking on what people were going to do and trying to aggregate folks into one particular thing. But I do think that that's a great idea to rotate and allow that amplification to happen.
Am I imagining it, or was there money for block parties through
No,
the city?
you're not
Was
imagining.
that
There was there
Okay.
yeah in the Office of Economic Opportunity they had grants for block parties. There were small grants for block parties, which would just be I think for the just I don't know if they're still doing those though. I know that they were happening last summer.
No, they're doing that because I've had some folks reach out to me for like letters of support or something like that. So those are still circulating.
Um
Do we know how much they were?
it's
Oh,
not a lot.
It's
It's
like
$750 last
$2,000.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
less than 2,000.
yeah, it's like
Oh.
I think it was 7, and it's also which is fine, but no alcohol, which
Yeah.
some works for some block parties, might not work for others. Um,
But I think with this neighborhood thing, I think we still want to make sure the city's making an investment for, not that, less resource, like what's going to happen on Beacon Hill is going to be very different than what can happen in Roxbury, not just because the neighborhoods are different, but the economic bases are different. And so to ensure that everybody can have a quality experience, I mean, that's the biggest thing I want to see happen is that however this rotates is, oh my God, this weekend, these three celebrities will be in these three neighborhoods, right? And there'll be concerts with quality sound, quality performers, high production value. Like all of that needs to happen wherever it goes. And that's what the city can ensure. The things that are built off of it or around it can vary, but I do think that every neighborhood should be able to have a high level production value event there somewhere.
Nope,
I mean-
That's good.
Dave,
Does the block party application and programming intersect at all with the open streets programming? Like, could those tie? They're different, I know, but would we want to tie that together? Like, let's for this point, like support and advocate for block parties, but also roll out a more robust version of what open streets might look like during this period. Would it make sense to tie those together? Or is that like two aspects of bureaucracy that don't want to like mix together?
I'm not sure. I think it would make sense, but it would depend also on when they do the open streets. I just pulled up like the 2024 ones and they go all the way into the fall and they're pretty spaced out. So I guess it's a discussion worth having to see if the things can work together.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
It also, there are a lot of festivals and parades and things happening in those months of May to August that we can take inspiration from and collaborate with so that we have city ones and we're supporting the ones that are already existing. And it feels like party the entire summer. So
Can we, sorry, this is a small item, but as long as we're going to be making recommendations, can we recommend that we imagine a much more vibrant version of the July 4th reading of the Declaration that does not include the current format for it being read by members of the Ancient Honorable Artillery Company, whom I think are fantastic, but I think most of our audiences are not necessarily moved by the power of their reading, and we could get somebody who's an amazing voice and a well-known celebrity who could do the reading. And I think we talked about this before. We need to surround it with something that somewhat interrogates that text as well. But that should just be supersized. There should be a commitment from the city to invest in that particular culminating event, which is already well known, and make it something truly memorable that feels like it speaks to the city that we live in today.
I like that, Nat, and I think what we can even propose in terms of how you source that is we have so many different theater groups here that maybe that's a way that they can participate. Or, and I know some people are going to view this as sacrilege, is there a way that we set the Declaration or some of the words? Well, John Adams was a little bit fiery, but he might be a little bit more like gangster rap. I don't know. But if you set the words to some of these founders to music with dance, right? And allowing that to then embody something. So it's one thing to hear the Declaration read by phenomenal speakers, but what does it look like if it's a performance piece? And the challenge is you bring different dance groups together, and now I'm getting imaginative, but since we're here, if there's one piece and different dance groups have the ability to like interpret or dance to different aspects of it, that becomes a unified performance, then it looks and feels different. I know that's a little bit more eccentric than what Boston is used to, but if we're going to do something different in this moment, to capture so many different people, let's do something like that.
I think that's a
What day
Oh.
does it happen? Day of the week, do you know? In July?
Next year's 4th of July, I do not know,
Okay.
but we can look it up quickly.
I like what Noel is saying. I think there's,
It's a Saturday.
oh, that's great. And are the ancients and honorables, is that a tradition or is that,
Yes, and it's actually a surprisingly recent tradition, although they will tell you it goes back to time immemorial, but actually within relatively recent living memory, it was the valedictorian of, I don't know, valedictorians of all the Boston Public High Schools competed in an oratory contest or something, and the winner got to be the reader of the Declaration. I'm not proposing we do that. I'm just saying, like, there have been many traditions, and there's no reason why we can't do something more imaginative.
I guess I'm wondering if we might test how far this could go by certainly keeping the traditional reading at the old State House where it would have been from anyway. And maybe somewhere nearby have something like what you're describing, Noel, that might be something of a not a concert, but like I don't know, just a rap competition, some sort of a spin-off that does exactly what you're describing, but it's
performance
modern
art.
takeoffs.
So I think what you're doing, what you're saying is, let's keep this tradition for the traditionalist, because that is a segment of the audience. Keep it, make it at one time, but then this alternative should not exist in competition. It should exist as a complement. And so
Yeah.
I don't think it's a rap competition. I think we create something or a challenge to invite different groups.
Mhm.
to, I don't know if there's one piece that's made or if it's you get 5 minutes or something, or you know, whatever it is, to represent a portion of the declaration or all of the declaration or key concepts or something. Like it could be a number of different things, but it exists as a way to support what the moment is calling for.
I also think this could be an opportunity to expand that to the neighborhoods. And what I mean by that is, you know, maybe in each neighborhood, they team up with a creative organization, you know, in that neighborhood to kind of reimagine the reading, right? So like maybe in East Boston, there's a Latinx element where maybe they read the you know, declaration in Spanish and pair that with you know, some type of performance. Or in Mattapan, you know, maybe there's a Haitian Creole element, you know, all to say to celebrate not only, you know, the Declaration of Independence, but also what it means to different groups aside from kind of the traditional way that it's been read. And it gets people in the neighborhoods involved, and it highlights, you know, organizations in these neighborhoods as well.
I would
So
want to
I
make
guess
sure
I
we
wanna-
record it.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding.
And there's also
I
good-
feel sorry. I feel like that's a really good idea, and at the same time, I just saw someone put in the chat that the reading of the Frederick Douglass, what is the 4th of July to the slave, to a slave. I think actually having them as a complement works out really well, especially if we're talking about how to engage people in different communities. I think if we privilege the Declaration, which I'm not saying that it shouldn't be read, but the complement could also be a really awesome reading with Frederick Douglass, and Mass Humanities already does really amazing work there, and kind of pulling those two events together and side by side, which then also gives a really interesting picture of talking about this declaration and also thinking about who it actually left out, and in having a different conversation. And I think that could work also really well, and still be extremely engaging, and also bring people in who might not necessarily show up to the reading of the Declaration in Boston.
yeah,
I like that a lot.
yeah. And what I was going to add to that as well, sorry, and then I'll let Joan go because she's had her hand up for a while, is like, you know, if we're in Mattapan and it's a Haitian community, there's total opportunity to also engage the Haitian Revolution and their independence movement
Sure.
because it was connected. So there's a lot of opportunity to discuss how like revolutions and how these movements for independence and for freedom are connected, historically and in the present. So it could be a real fun thing to do and also a historically illuminating thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and also I'm not technically on this committee. I can wait to speak, you know? But the Frederick Douglass reading I threw in the chat. I've been archiving, you know, I research as I think of things, so I've been throwing a lot of things into the chat. But there's was an interesting call from the Harbor Islands for their Innovation Island grant this year that my organization applied for it. But essentially it's plan an event on an island and we will give you a couple $1,000s. It's not like, and it's very open-ended. And so looking at the types of organizations who have been part of that, it includes, you know, dance organizations and community organizations and history and education and professional, like there's a lot of different people who are, or groups who have been interested in it. And I'm wondering if a similar process for, you know, looking at doing events out in the community would be a good idea. Like I was thinking of Zoomix, Noelle, when you were talking about performance and like there are so many cool groups like that out there that I think you could get a lot of folks to, you know, what does revolution mean to you, or what does this document mean to you, or however you wanted to spin it. But I didn't want to just drop the Innovation Islands link in there without explaining what my connective thought was.
Thanks, Joan.
Nice.
Nat?
Suggestion here. So this is an amazingly creative group. There's lots of really amazing ideas being brought forward about this specific event. But I think we probably all could stipulate that there are probably other people that we can think of who could do even more with the idea of supersizing this event and connecting it out to the neighborhoods and using other media in order to amplify or interrogate the text. And could we agree that like we want to say to the city, it's a priority to do something creative with this, that the existing framework should not be treated as sacrosanct and in fact should be taken apart for purposes of this, and we should do something memorable that uses all these different pieces that we've surfaced here, but that maybe the next step for the city is to fund something big and create a specific group who's charged with imagining that event. And it may include some of these people, but it may include others who are not here. Because I think we have more things we need to agree on. And we've probably fleshed this one out sufficiently to give some guidance about what we think that event could look like. Is that fair? I don't want people to hear that as I don't think this is fun and useful, and I'm learning a lot from the conversation. I just worry that we're probably going beyond our charge here.
I agree,
that was
Nat.
really
I think that we should just, like I said earlier, put in another bullet point that there should be some kind of citywide celebration sponsored by the city that touches all the neighborhoods, and that as you say, Nat, create some kind of committee that would then create committees in each of the neighborhoods to see what those events will look like per neighborhood, something like that. And something about exhibits. We didn't have enough about exhibits in there as well,
Yeah,
right?
I think what's needed is a curator or a curatorial team for this event. I don't think it's not fair to Amy Yandel to say, we love this, make it bigger, do something
Exactly.
fantastic. Like
Right.
there has to be a curatorial team. And I actually think some members of this group might be great for it. But that's probably enough for purposes of right now.
Well, I would say let's get a little bit more specific in terms of exhibitions. Is one, I absolutely agree. I think a curatorial team, because even if there have been some exhibitions that have happened in the past at my organization, I'm sure at your organization, Nat, where people are like, that was amazing. Can you bring that back up again? And you're like, sure, if you have this millions of dollars or whatever our budget is to redo. So even if you're asking either Mass Historical or any of us to reactivate something in the next year, you still need a curatorial team. And so I think the proposal should be a curatorial team and encourage the city to look at putting it not just in major tourist spaces, but across the city. So in different neighborhoods, partnering with different groups to figure out what that can look like. But I think that curatorial team can think about I specialize in rapid response. You can do some really good things in a very short period of time. You just have to get out of your long-term thinking situation. And so at this point, we're looking at a rapid response framework for this. But I think it's feasible to do. And then maybe think about something in more of the tourist areas, not just to tell people about where they are, but how else they can see other interesting aspects of the city.
Good stuff.
There was a brief conversation about art earlier, and I think I just want to. So we haven't had much of a conversation, and maybe it's because we're not sure whether that fits in our purview under exhibits or not. But I just want to suggest, so as we were thinking about what the reading of the Declaration could be and combining it with dance in some creative way that might excite imagination, that is itself a form of public art. And I think it would be exciting for the city to invest or to encourage some sponsors interested in supporting our efforts to invest in a collection of temporary public art installations, using all the media that one might imagine to tell the story of how this moment 250 years ago relates to the city we live in today and the unfinished work that we're all co-owners of, whether we want to be or not. I think that could be really exciting, and it also could be used to anchor programmatic work in the places where those pieces are installed. And they could be as simple as murals in some places, or a memorial of some sort. But it could be performative. It could be using audio or whatever. I think it would be fun to create a scattered collection across the city that people could go and explore if they wanted to see them all or to see some section of them. And it would also just create opportunities to anchor additional work in different places.
I have a question. I'm going to age myself here. I think it was about 15 years ago or so. I know in DC and some other cities, you had this massive public art project with these temporary statues that cities would get produced, and then different artists would decorate them. I don't know if this happened in Boston. This might be an opportunity to revisit that, and make it a little bit, more generic. Like, is it a giant bee or is it whatever? And that's because what happened with that is that there were some people who literally schlepped all over these cities to find every single one. I was not that interested. That did not, make my day, but it was a thing. And it was a talking piece, and people posed with them, and they posted on social and things like that. So I appreciate what Nat's saying, but this is something that's a little bit quicker to turn around. So just a thought there, because the big pink guy's just around the corner from my office on on top of the old corner bookstore, right? And it's like that's a choice.
Yep.
And then the car with the drone in it was around the other corner a few weeks ago. So I'm just thinking, like, if there was something that Matt was able to order so many of them, commission artists.
Well,
and do
yes,
that.
and Boston has done both cows and codfish, if I'm not mistaken. And the codfish were two options, one standing up vertically and one sort of on its side. But I actually like that idea a lot, because that could engage a lot of people in different ways.
Yes, and then at the back end, people bought the cows and put them
That's right.
in their they're like, you find them in people's yards all over the state these days.
Yeah, I put a link in there because I was like, was it the cows or there were lobsters in Plymouth? I remember that, and just being
Yeah.
like, so cute.
Lobsters. Now there's a good one.
I just think we have to figure out what it would be for 250. And usually when they sold, weren't they sold and the funds were directed towards something specific? I
Yeah, I
feel
think
like in DC it was directed like to some office to do something good. I know that is not very descriptive, but there was a specific purpose, and so it wasn't just doing it to do it. It went to fundraise. And in this case, maybe it supports historic preservation, or maybe it helps offset whatever we end up doing with the markers,
I like that.
And that's it's the cows were the Jimmy Fund.
Jimmy Fund, yeah.
Yeah, and I was gonna say my terrible idea is bean pots.
Oh,
It's cute, but like, is it really a thing? I don't know. Anyway.
Lobsters would actually
hockey
work
it is.
because during the Revolutionary period, people called the redcoats lobsters, but then lobsters also have meaning to Bostonians.
Karen, you're the expert. What is your thought?
No lobsters.
Yeah. No,
No beans, no lobsters.
Right. Yeah, we're stealing your thunder, but
No. I'm
yes,
sorry. I
tell
got
us
a
why art is
call.
great, Karen.
I'd love to, I have, and Kathy, I want to brief you on it more generally. Like, we have a lot of projects scheduled that I can go over with you that are coming up. Like, we're going to hopefully be having the Frederick Douglass Legacy Project actually installed, which is a pretty big deal. I think we could build something around that. We still have Unmonument. Mellon is open to us extending into the end of December. So other projects, like the project, she didn't put it forward this year, Nat, Lauren Wood's project. She said she needed more time. So I don't know if she would reconsider, that could be brought. There are other art projects, but I do think people do love all those. We could do like a version of Paint Box across the city. I know it's not as fancy, but we could paint the utility boxes. We could have a theme around the 250th or something like that. But I know people love the cows and love all those things. I think there'd be a way to do it, but I don't know. But yeah, I would love to bring in art. I think public art can be treated like an exhibition, like, and given that seriousness and that Dr. Trent, that you were saying, like of museum quality, I think we'd have to approach it the right way. But I think we certainly could bring museum quality work to the public realm thoughtfully. We have some other really interesting projects that we're looking at that I'd maybe I could bring to this group in a month or two to brief you on.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I'm
Don't-
trolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, don't put that out into the universe.
No, because I already know what people are gonna do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not good.
No.
It's not gonna end how we want it to. It's not gonna end how we want it to. But I do think it's worth thinking about, because there is a whole group of people who like running around and getting the photos with the things. And so I think that if it's something bigger, it's something unique, and it's temporary, that creates an urgency for people to go find it, to be a part of it.
There's also the possibility of thinking about projection art. That's something where like the city's nightlife priority also could be enhanced. I mean, we have, I think, only a dozen surviving 18th century structures around the city, but they are scattered. I mean, they're the greatest density is downtown, but we do have them in other neighborhoods. And you know, the Bunker Hill reference reminded me that projection was once used on that monument to pretty significant effect. And you could invite projection artists to explore a range of different installations. You know, we've had guerrilla projection art on the old State House and Old South Meeting House recently, as well as other sites.
That artist is the one, Kathy, you were just talking about, the woman who said she was researching plaques, who did apply to Unmonument too.
Yeah.
So we might be able to wrap her in. But Illuminate has been did incredible projections through Unmonument on the National Center for Afro-American Artists recently. I don't know if any of you saw that. Really beautiful. But we could do it. I mean, we could do a version of what happened this weekend.
Right.
I have to jump to a meeting, another conversation. Sorry.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
I think this is all really great and really helpful for offering some more concrete direction that can shape the next year. I think this will be very, very helpful in output. Hennessy, are you thinking that you will capture all of this in a way that we can put back to, just email back to everybody who's participated or members of the committee, just to make sure we captured everything you think we said, and also, if there's anything else that would tweak some of the ideas that have come out of this session, that we'll have them from you. You can update the information that we've captured today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have it in meeting minutes, but also I'll put it in a separate, more digestible recommendation format.
Thank you for letting me crash your committee. It's a lot of fun.
Anytime.
We're a fun group, Joan.
You guys are fun. The archivists are also fun, but there are a lot of archivists,
That's great.
Well, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Great to see you again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good to see
Bye.
you too. Bye.
Bye all.
Here. Bye-bye.